the Orchard Cemetery. Outside of my city, there's an apple orchard with a small cemetery in the end of it, with only about 5 or 10 graves in it. If you visit the cemetery, it's customary to leave a small offering by the largest headstone. Even an apple from the orchard will do. If you do not, every night you go to sleep that week, you will see an old man in your dreams. On the first night, he will appear to be normal, balding, old man. He will tip his hat to you and walk away. On the second night, he will have a knife in his right hand. He will tip his hat to you and walk off once more. The third night, he will lick the knife and laugh before disappearing. On the fourth night, he will appear closer to you than before and lick his knife once again. On the fifth night, he'll practically be on top of you. On the sixth night, he will appear as a skeleton dressed in rotten rags, still holding the knife, still making the licking motion. No one knows how long this continues or how it ends. The victims have either gone back by then and made an offering, or they've died of heart attacks in their sleep. Number 2. Sever the cord. Many have speculated that the plane in which we live is not the only plane in existence. Those who say this will usually then go on to ponder realms of mystery and wonder. The truth is, there is a second plane, but it's not filled with euphoric images that most people conjure up. However, it's filled with the horrors. Rather, it is the perfect emulation of our world. There is no difference at all. Whatever exists on our plane also exists to the second plane. Even you exist on the second plane. In fact, those copies of ourselves, those extra-dimensional clones, are bonded to us. Whatever action we take, they take, and vice versa. That means that in the other plane, the other you is reading this right now. In this second plane, there's only one difference. A God resides there. Though, some may call him the devil. Watching over the mirrors of those in our realm, this God has no mirror. He resides only in the second plane. Our copies cannot see him either, for unknown reasons. But he can see them. He knows what they're doing. Therefore, he knows what you are doing. There is only one way to escape this constant watching, but it could come at a terrible price. Stand before a mirror. You see a reflection? That is your copy. Look him straight in the eye, and you, with all of your might, that you see before you is not you. Rather, it's a perfect emulation of you. As soon as you have made this mental breakthrough, turn off the lights. Wait a while. About 2 minutes should do. Then turn them back on. Your reflection will be gone. You have just severed the bond between you and your copy. You can no longer see him, but he exists. Now, however, you will be free to do as you please without your copy mirroring it, and without the God knowing what you are doing. You could murder 1,000 people and walk without fear of retribution. However, it is not recommended that you do this. As you sever the bond, the same decay that affected the bond will eat slowly upon the remnants of one side of the cord. As it reaches whichever you was on that particular side, it will begin to eat away at its soul. Whichever version of you is affected will become sicklier, paler. It will stink of death its movements will become stiff as it nears the final stages of this illness. It will become merely a shadow of itself. It becomes a ghost, cursed to forever roam whatever existence it resides in, a shattered soul and lost cause. However, if it is not you that is affected by this illness, but your copy, you will walk free. You will walk without judgment. You will be a god among men. But be careful, for if that disease eats up your side of the cord, you'll fall prey to its effects. Trust me. I know. Number 3. See the light. Back in the late 60s, there existed a religious sect known as the Process Church of the Final Judgment. Their core beliefs were that at the end of the world, Christ and Satan would come together, reconcile, and begin to judge and execute the population. So they worshipped both of them. While this information set people on edge, it did not deter people from becoming members of the process, and the church flourished throughout the 60s and 70s. In that period, an increase was seen in missing children across the United Kingdom, the Mexican Yucatan Peninsula, and even in the state of New Orleans. Kids ranging from as young as 3 to as old as 10 were being taken on walks home, in their front yards, and even sometimes from their homes in the dead of the night. Bodies were rarely ever recovered. When they were, well, let's just say it was quickly established that it would have been better for the families to simply hold out hope for a safe return. What was done to these children was simply horrifying. Every unspeakable act you can possibly think of in order to inflict pain was carried out. All children left completely blind, with a look of indescribable pain and terror on their faces, if any were discovered by the authorities, or God forbid, passers-by. Due to the satanic panic raging throughout the United States and the United Kingdom at the time, most information regarding satanic cults or missing person cases were kept under lock and key, so as not to cause mass hysteria. One particular incident caused so much havoc, it was feared that if brought to the public's light, it would shock the nation to its core. On October 12, 1975, a photograph was posted to the local authorities in 15 states in the USA and 5 countries in the UK, all receiving the same image, the one that you see. On October 13th, a normal middle-class family in Essex was settling down for the night when the father heard his son screaming from his room. As he darted upstairs, he found a man in a white lab coat, goggles, and a modified gas mask towering over his frightened 7-year-old son. The father reacted quickly and subdued the man before calling the authorities. When he was brought in, he was identified as Reverend Michael Turnwell. Though he had no records of ever living in the area, in fact, the residence he was registered at was 300 miles away. What was he doing all the way out here? In his pockets, they found a bottle of chloroform, a rag, a switchblade knife, and a small pocketbook that was filled from cover to cover with nonsensical gibberish mixed in with citations from the satanic verses and the Old Testament. When asked what the hell he was doing with all those items and his purpose for that young boy, he simply smiled, wide-eyed, and said, "I'm doing God's work." They needed to see the light. Under further interrogation, it was revealed he was a member of the Church of the Process. He agreed to show the police where the children were being taken in exchange for protection, assuring them all the while, "The children are fine. They're with God now. They saw the light." Not fully understanding this vague reference, they persisted and got him to open up. This is what he told them. "We knew that the children could be spared judgment, for they do not understand sin. They are pure. But in order to be accepted into God's loving arms, they first needed to see the light. So he subjected it to them with the God machine. Those that became blind and removed their goggles were punished accordingly. Those that were not blinded were accepted into God's flock, their souls escaping their bodies and their shells to be used as we saw fit. They were no longer harboring any children. He trailed off, giggling like a child. Those were our toys to play with. And believe me, officers, we did enjoy our toys, even if they broke sometimes. Love the sin, hate the sinner. He burst out laughing, the room seemingly shaking around him. After a few moments, they asked him, what happened to the children that turned around as all the children positioned in these images were facing outwards? The Reverend gave a sick, twisted smile and said slowly, in an unnaturally deep voice,
They're the ones who became part of his legion. What do you think carries on our work once some of us get caught or perish? We are everywhere, detective. We will bring the children to the light. You simply need to look west, and you will know the face of evil.
He suddenly leaned forward to intently stare at the detectives opposite him and asked sadistically,
Tell me, do you have children?
He was found dead in his cell the following morning, having concealed a cyanide cap in one of his teeth. Some weeks following, one of the officers involved in the case lost their child, a little boy. He simply vanished one day walking home from school. His body was never recovered. Serial killers Fred and Rose West were caught 19 years later on the 24th of February 1994 after a 20-year spree in which they assaulted and killed more than 13 people, including their own children. When Fred was interrogated, he mentioned that 20 children were captured and killed by himself. When they questioned how he managed to capture all of them so easily, he simply smiled and said,
It's easy when you live directly next to a church.